Well, South Africa 2024 national and provincial elections are on the horizon, with more than 350 political parties already joining the race and 30 of these registering with the Independent Electoral Commission in the last quarter of 2023 alone.
But guys, 350 political parties, 350. I mean, guys, can you just imagine how the ballot will look like with 350 political parties, more than 350 political parties? Guys, come on, man. I know this is democracy. I know that people are allowed to choose. I know that people are allowed to start their own political parties. But right now, it's starting to sound insane. It's starting to sound insane, man. How do these people actually expect South Africans to vote? How do you expect South Africans to vote? Because what I can tell you is that with these many political parties, man, people are simply going to revert to the political parties they know. People will simply vote for the ANC, DA, and the EFF. This is what people are going to vote for. 300 political parties, man. How do these people expect South Africans to actually vote? You have 300 political parties, but you have how many South Africans are actually not even going to the polls to vote? How many South Africans are actually right now registered to vote? 300 political parties. Guys, do you think having more than 300 political parties on the ballot makes sense? Do you think it makes sense? Because I don't want to go against it, because it will look like I'm going against the freedom of choice. It will look like I'm going democracy. But guys, do you think it makes sense for South Africa to have more than 300 political parties? Man, it's only 9 provinces. It's not like this is the United States of America, where you have over 50 states, man, with millions and millions and millions of people. It's only 9 provinces. What do we need 300 political parties for? Why do we need 300 political parties, man? Doesn't the IEC have a limit? I mean, like, the IEC at this point, they really need to have a limit and say, guys, this whole thing is starting to sound insane. It's starting to sound insane, and it is also starting to look insane. How do you expect people, man, to flip? I mean, are we going to be given the books when we go to the polls? How will the ballot look like? How is the ballot going to look like? And isn't this whole thing is going to convince people? Isn't it going to confuse people? Do these people actually care about the fact that the voters of this country will actually be confused with the 300 political parties? Guys, I cannot even I cannot even comprehend the thought of 300 political parties on one ballot paper. 300 parties, one ballot papers. Man, come on, guys. What are your thoughts, man? Do you think having over 350 political parties on the ballot makes sense or not?
Some analysts have seen the emergence of smaller political parties and independent candidates as a healthy developing democracy, while others have been cautious to not yet rule out the popularity of the big 3 political parties, that being the ANC, the DA, and the EFF. But what?
I mean, like, having 300 political parties, man, it simply tells you that people who can actually see the game, they can see, man, South Africans are gullible, man. How about we start our own political parties and start lying to these people? The same way these political parties are already lying to the people. The same way big political parties are already lying to the people. I mean, to me, it sounds like it. It looks like it. It looks like these political parties, especially the ones that have just registered with IEC, their motive is simply to go to parliament and enjoy the perks of being in parliament. But this whole thing of 300 political parties, to me, it doesn't make sense. Personally, to me, it doesn't make sense. I'm not saying in general it doesn't make sense. I know to other people, man, it completely makes sense. This is the reason why I'm asking, guys, does it make sense? And why do you think it makes sense? Guys, please tell me on the comment sections, man. Tell me on the comment sections. I'm simply sitting here trying to even imagine how the ballot is going to look like. How the ballot is going to look like.
What role will smaller political parties play in this year's elections? Well, to find out, let's have a chat to Terry Tilani, who's the executive chairperson of the Institute of Elections Management Services in Africa, and Yanga Molatana, who is elections project manager at the University of Pretoria's ESI Press. Good to have both of you. Thank you very, very much for joining us here on the program.
Thank you so much for having us, Leanne. Much appreciated.
It's an absolute pleasure. And to you as well, Terry. Thank you for your time and good to see you this year.
Thank you very much for having me, Leanne.
Younger, let me begin with you. With over 350 parties that are currently registered with the Electoral Commission of South Africa and independent candidates also joining in, how do you feel about that? I mean, is it too much? Is it good? Is it what? Help me understand this, Younger. From your perspective, what do you think?
Sure. I think my perspective will be coming from the practicalities and the principles that have been applied on what exactly democracy encourages in the first place. The idea of choice is very much undergirded in the principles of democracy, and usually the more choices that people have, the better. However, we have to take in the consideration that people are humans. And whenever we are faced with an insurmountable amount of choices, we usually end up having what psychologists call a choice overload, which usually results in people either making no decision at all, which is what we had seen in the previous cycles of elections, because this is not a new thing for us to have so many political parties on the list. And it results in usually lower voter turnout and people just deciding not to vote at all. And also the second part of it is just people feel overwhelmed. These options that have been offered to them are usually options that curate a message that is quite similar across all the different political parties. And people tend to just think, well, they all kind of sound the same. And it's just overwhelming to decide on what to choose one. And people retract and they just decide, well, I'm just not going to vote to begin with. It's too overwhelming for me. So that's a little bit of where I'm standing with it.
Yeah.
I mean, like, this is the reason why we keep saying the smaller political parties need to come together. 300 political parties, man. I'm sure many political parties in IEC, they can actually, I'm sure many political parties, if they were to sit down with other political parties, they would actually realize that, guys, we have the same values. We want the same things for South Africa. Why are we not coming under one umbrella? I mean, guys, there's no need for South Africa to have 300 political parties. There's no need for South Africa to have 300 political parties, man. If anything, you are going to push the voters to go and vote for the African National Congress. They are used to living with African National Congress anyway. But do you think having 300 political parties is actually helping and advancing our democracy? I don't think it's helping and advancing our democracy. If anything, it's hurting our democracy. Because can you imagine how confused the people will be in the polls? People are going to be completely confused in the polls. They wouldn't know what some of these political parties mean. I mean, like, even those political parties, they know very well that there's no chance for us to actually govern this country. Why don't we come together with other political parties? It sounds like right now in South Africa, I mean, we are seeing a bunch of people, man, just having the ambitions to go to parliament and enjoy the perks of being in parliament. It has nothing to do right now with helping the citizens of this country. Because if these people, man, were really serious about helping the people of this country, man, these political parties, they would actually come together. Many of these political parties, they would come together. Many political parties that have the same goals, the same visions, the political parties that want the same things. Most of these people, they would come together. But the fact that right now we have over 300 political parties in the ballot, what does it say to you? What does it say to you? To me, it sounds like we have a bunch of selfish people, man, who simply want to go to parliament to enjoy the perks. That's what it looks like to me. It looks like we have a bunch of... These people simply want to go to parliament, man. They want to go to parliament. So, guys, how do you... Like, what are your predictions, man? What are your predictions? What do you think this whole thing of 300 political parties, what do you think is going to do to South Africa? Do you actually think this whole thing of 300 political parties is going to advance South Africa? Or do you think this whole thing of 300 political parties is going to hurt South Africa? Man, can you imagine if the ANC were to go into coalition with a party that you never heard of in 2024? With 350 political parties, chances are these people, man, they might go into coalition with a party that you never heard of. Man, 2024 election, man, is going to be like election like no other. I'm telling you, 2024 election, man, is going to be an election like no other election. What if ANC, man, gathers around a bunch of parties that you never heard of and say, guys, we are fine. We know that we got less than 50%, but with these 80 political parties that you never heard of, now we have the majority to run the country. I mean, like, to me, it sounds like these people, man, are simply going to give ANC a leeway to run the country again. Because the ANC doesn't have to go into coalition with the DA. They don't have to go into coalition with the EFF. They don't have to go into coalition with the IFP. They know that these political parties are well established. So what are they going to do? They're going to go to those smaller political parties, small political parties. The people in those political parties, man, they have big ambitions. They have big ambitions, and these people, man, wouldn't bat an eye if ANC says, man, let's go and run the country together. These people wouldn't bat an eye. How are you going to feel if the ANC actually governs the country with 10 political parties that you never heard of?
Yeah. And I can understand that perspective as well, because, I mean, Terry, we look at that paper and it starts getting intimidating, and we look at, I mean, just the thought of having a novel of political parties or candidates in front of me also starts scaring me. But let me get your opinion on this, because you've got a lot of inside info on all of this and the runnings of how these elections work. Do you feel that the emergence of a number of these breakaway smaller political parties is a sign of a maturing democracy and an electoral system, or is this just a mess?
Well, it depends really where you're coming from. But from the point of view of a citizen of a country, it's a good thing. It's good for democracy that they've got different options. They can be able to choose whoever would be able to cater for their interest. And the emergence of political parties obviously is there to fill a gap within the society that is not filled by major political parties. But if you are managing the elections from the administration point of view, it is obviously going to be very difficult because the more political parties you have, the more logistical difficulties it creates for a person who is managing who is managing the electoral processes. So it is good for democracy, and it allows the voters to options to be able to choose whoever they want to vote for. But at the same time, as I've indicated, it may be difficult in terms of the way the election management.
I mean, if we have 300 political parties, how many minutes is IEC going to give you at the booth? Because I can imagine someone like me, I'm going to come out and say, man, let me look at all of these political parties. How long people are going to wait in the queues, waiting for people to go through 300 political parties. Can you imagine, man, waiting for someone to finish casting their ballot so that you can get in? And that person takes 20 minutes, 30 minutes, because this person, man, is looking through the whole 350 political parties, man. No, guys.
Body is going to be managing.
Man, I can just imagine many people will simply go back home. Many people will simply go back home. You know that even people are not even in favor of voting. People are not in favor of voting in general. So having to ask them to wait in queue for other people to look through 350 political parties, what do you think is going to do with the elections, man? I don't think the people who have actually registered to vote, all of those people are actually going to be able to vote, because the queues are going to take a long time. People are going to take a long time before they actually cast a vote, because people will be looking through these political parties that, man, I don't want to vote for the ANC, I don't want to vote for the EFF, I also don't want to vote for the Democratic Alliance, man. Let me scroll and look through these 350 political parties to actually see which political parties I can vote for. Do you think everyone who actually registered will actually get a chance to vote? I don't think so. I don't think so. This is the reason why I say, to me, it sounds like a bad idea, because I cannot wait for someone to take 20 minutes to cast a vote. I cannot do that.
All these political parties, if they decide to contest for the elections.
Yeah, so it is going to be difficult to manage, and I think that the IEC do understand that, and that's a reality. But do you think, as Younger put it, that perhaps a lot of people will be intimidated by this and actually stay away from voting because there's just too much to take into consideration and too many choices there?
Of course.
Terry, I'm asking this one to you.
Of course, it can create the difficulties for a voter if you've got in one ballot paper all these political parties, or if the ballot paper is actually such that it becomes multiple pages. It is going to be difficult for a voter to be able to make a choice, and it can be very intimidating. But you may remember also that even though the political parties register with the IEC, not all of them register to contest the elections at the national level. So some of them have registered to contest municipal elections.
But still, it's going to be confusing. Still, it will confuse the people. It is going to confuse the people still.
Some would only contest one municipality. Others should contest at the provincial level and not all the provinces. It depends on the strength of the political party. And hopefully, we will not find the situation where the ballot paper is so long or it's multiple pages to the extent that it can create confusion.
But what do you think is going to happen? What do you think is going to happen with 350 political parties? Of course, the ballot is going to be long. Of course, the ballot is going to be long. Okay, fine. Not all of them are contesting for the national, but the ballot is going to be long still because those political parties will be on the ballot. The ballot is going to be long still. Guys, I think the ANC is going to go into coalition with the party we never heard of. I mean, like, this would be the best thing for the African National Congress. This is the best thing for the ANC. The best thing, I mean, like, this is the best thing for the African National Congress, I'm telling you. Because right now, the ANC, when you really think about it, they don't have to go into coalition with all of these popular political parties. They don't have to. They don't have to, man. They don't have to. And with the smaller political parties, man, helping these people to govern the country, it's still the ANC running the country. So brace yourselves. Brace yourselves. You are going to get another 5 years of the African National Congress with the political parties you never heard of. I mean, like, if I was at the executive of the African National Congress, man, I would never advocate for the African National Congress to work with these popular political parties. These popular political parties are going to give me trouble. DA is going to try to put me in line. The EFF is too ambitious, man. You cannot have the EFF. The EFF is too ambitious. Julius Malema, man, will act like a president, man. Can you imagine if the ANC goes into coalition with the EFF and now Julius Malema is the deputy president of the country, man, the man would take over Ramaphosa. You can see that Ramaphosa is weak. You can see Ramaphosa is weak. Malema would actually act like a president of the country. So if I was the member of the African National Congress in the executive, I would never allow or advocate for the ANC to go into coalition with these popular political parties. I'm going to take tons and tons of smaller political parties, man, and bring those people to come with us.
For a vote.
So obviously we're seeing now the new political parties, younger, going out and that are coming in, contesting these elections. And I mean, we literally just give one example of a manifesto that we saw coming out this weekend, and that, of course, was RZIs Manifesto. So, you know, this is also a very important part so that South Africans can get to know who the different parties are, what they stand for, and also understanding what they do offer the voters. So let's sort of take a look at that. Obviously, we've got your bigger parties that are more established, and we sort of by now know what they do stand for. But these smaller ones, do you think it's important that, or do you think it'll be possible, in and amongst all of the noise of so many parties coming through, that they will be able to have their voices heard?
Sure.
But honestly, it's up to them to get their voices heard. It's up to them. We cannot fault anyone if these smaller political parties are unable to get their voices heard. It's up to them to get their voices heard.
I think, just to touch on what Terry had said related to how the ballots are going to run and the fact that a political party is not limited to just running for the national seating in parliament, for example. A lot of the smaller parties, if we're arguing an optimistic perspective, are targeting constituents that they know are going to vote for them and are going to back them in the specific objective that they have. And it is possible, however, to be slightly cynical, though, that some of the other breakaway parties that have come from this are parties where those leaders were very highly disillusioned from their own political parties, their original political parties, and that's the reason why they have started what they've started. And it's more of a decision of what personal gain that they can get out of it. But overall, I think it would be very difficult to expect South Africans to sit and try to figure out all the different manifestos and policy standings of close to 350 political parties. And even if what ends up being on the ballot itself, once those parties do get through the administrative process with the IEC, which is quite costly, and if those political smaller parties survive the financial implications for it and they end up being there, the question is, what unique perspective do they have that has enabled them to even be on the ballot in the first place? And also, what mechanisms are they going to have to be able to have?
I mean, there's nothing new. There's nothing new that these smaller kind of political parties are bringing. There's nothing new. All of these political parties that are opposing the ANC, they're saying the same thing. All of them. They're saying the same thing. All of these political parties that are opposing the ANC, they're saying the same thing. I guess the difference comes on what do these political parties want? What do these political parties want? But they are saying nothing different. All of them, they are saying the same thing. They are saying the same thing. That's why I'm saying, guys, is there any necessity for us to have over 300 political parties? Are you going to confuse people, man? You are going to confuse people. Just imagine, man, you want to cast a vote. Then you have a long trace of political parties. You have a ballot that looks like a book. You have a ballot that looks like a book. I don't know how ANC is going to be able to distribute those ballot books when they cannot even distribute the books for kids at primary schools.
Support that goes and extends beyond particularly social media. And one could argue that once we look at the first voter registration weekend that the IEC had, a lot of the smaller parties actually targeting young issues that a lot of youth people have. And the growing number of new voters are young people, which is a good thing, but the number still remains relatively low. And so we shouldn't be surprised if the smaller parties end up not necessarily surviving because of financial implications, or number two, the fact that a lot of them might only have a following on social media that doesn't translate into the financial push that puts them on the ballot in the first place. Hence, then making it possible for people to just see the choices that were already there from the beginning. So that's kind of like the way I view it from that perspective.
Yeah. Let's dwell a little, Terry, if you don't mind, on this manifesto launch. I mean, we see something like the small political party RZIs Manifesto coming and going early in terms of putting out what they stand for and talking to this manifesto. They speak, obviously, when we saw Zongezo Zibi speaking to some of the promises, and a lot of it, you know, is talking to what frustrates South Africans and wanting to end hunger and wanting a whole bunch of things that obviously many of us speak to. But the one thing that they did speak to was leadership, and they brought about something where they were saying that they actually wanted to bring in somebody like this committee to be chaired by Brigalia Baum, the former chairperson of the Electoral Commission, that is going to vet candidates for their political party. So not to just have this kind of, whatever we call it, where they actually not just given positions on allegiance, but they rather get there on merit. What do you think of this? I mean, some of the political parties and what they are saying.
Well, as you correctly pointed out, some of the political parties have identified a gap within the society that they believe will be able to make them competitive. And that gap currently seems to be the leadership question. And then therefore, the political parties such as RZIs Manifesto are trying to capitalize on that to try to make sure that they can, through their processes, be able to elect ethical leadership that can actually be able to carry the country forward. Because we have seen quite a number of complaints about the kind of the leadership we have in various areas. And it is that Mzansi RZIs Mzansi is basically the gap that they're basically trying to close within the society.
And that's one of the big things that I think, particularly when we look at the apathetic voter, doesn't want to go out and vote. And Terry, let me again ask you this question. There is a lot of voter apathy out there, and people want some political parties to actually talk directly to them. How do you do that? Because at the end of the day, there have been a lot of breakaway parties and smaller parties that have really struggled when it comes to elections and to actually get the votes. Do you think this young, energized feeling that we've got amongst these new parties that are coming, do you think that they will be able to make a difference and attract voters that are staying away from the polls from what history has told us?
I mean, like, those are the voters that they should target. Those are the voters that they should target, man. People who did not vote in the previous elections. Those are the people that they should target. And I think because there's not much education when it comes to the elections, people are not really educated. People, they don't actually understand the power they give to politicians. People, they don't actually understand what their voters mean. I mean, like, these are the reasons why people are so hesitant to go to the polls. Voter education is necessary, guys. Voter education is necessary. Because right now, if people, man, who always sit down when it's elections, if those people, man, if 50% of them, or maybe let's say 30% of the people who didn't vote in the past elections, if those people can wake up today and say, man, we are going to the polls and we are going to vote, those people are going to change things in South Africa. But the question is, but the thing is that there's no voter education in South Africa. And I honestly don't believe that there's a voter, there's still a space for voter education in South Africa, because you look at political parties, you look at the manner in which these political parties actually govern, and the fact that the majority of the people in South Africa, they're uneducated. So I don't think they would actually be interested in learning about the elections.
Well, hopefully so, because if you look at the last registration weekend, you're beginning to see more and more young people beginning to.
I mean, like, every election, political parties, they talk about voter education, but what is it that political parties have actually done? What is it political parties have actually done to advance this whole voter education thing? Because it can't be that every time, every election season, political parties are now talking about voter education. We need to teach people about voting. We need to teach people about voting. But throughout the years, man, the only thing they do is to complain about the African National Congress, instead of taking that 5 years, going around, teaching people about this voter education, teaching people about the importance of actually going out to the elections to vote. They are not teaching people that. They are not teaching people that. They only talk about voter education when it comes time to go to the polls. And unfortunately, man, talking about voter education at this time, it is not going to help anything. It is not going to help anything. People have already made up their own minds. People who are going to vote for the ANC, they are going to vote for the ANC, no matter what you say. People who are going to vote for the DA, they are going to vote for the DA, no matter what you say. People who are going to vote for the EFF, they are going to vote for the EFF, no matter what you say. The question comes, man, about these people, man, who don't even have a clue which political party to vote for. These people, they are not being targeted.
Register compared to the previous elections, and hopefully they are registering as a result of a hope that the new political parties represent, or even the older political parties that are there, that are beginning to say things that resonate with the public and the voters. And we will be able to detect this properly after the elections if the majority of young people have actually been able to vote for one political party or the other. We can then be able to see as to whether the strategies have worked. But I think increasingly political parties are also beginning to reach young people in forums where they are available. Social media particularly is being used, Twitter, TikTok, and all that.
But I don't think social media will actually result in people voting for you, man. I don't think social media will actually result in people voting for you. Go and ask the EFF, man. I don't think social media will actually do that.
So the platforms are being used. And I think compared to the previous occasions where political parties focus largely only on rallies, there is a new way of dealing with issues. There's a new way of trying to reach young people. There's a way of trying to speak their language, to go to the platforms where they are available. And then I think hopefully that will also begin to increase the number of people who will be able to participate in the process.
Indeed, and Younger, I mean, that's something that we, I suppose, need to look at very, very carefully as well. I mean, we've seen social media, it's active, people get involved, but does it translate into votes? And I know you brought up that topic a bit earlier.
No, it doesn't.
Your view, and I think a lot of people will want to get your view on this, is the analysis of new parties that we've seen coming in, such as Mkhonto we Sizwe and the African Congress for Transformation. Very quickly, do you think that they may bring in that apathetic voter that perhaps was going to vote, then decided, I don't like what's going on, but now see these parties and say, hang on, I'm coming back?
Yeah, I would argue that instead of an apathetic voter that they would bring in, they would actually be bringing in the frustrated voters that were likely in the constituency of the ANC in particular.
Yes.
But when it comes to the apathetic voters, oftentimes the demographic for that is usually not necessarily the base constituents of the main parties, but the young people. But 100% there is, from a social media perspective, there is a mood amongst young people where there's this desire to vote. There is this understanding as well about the power of the vote. But there's also a bit of a blockade where young people still get to a standstill and they say, okay, fine, I do want to vote, but then they arrive and they say, oh my goodness, I have all these parties to choose from. I don't know where to move forward from there. And so
But I don't think young people, man, are so enthusiastic about voting. I don't think young people are so enthusiastic about voting, man. I don't think so. I don't think so, man. And this is why, I mean, I want to warn smaller political parties. You see small political parties, I want to warn them. Just because people are talking about you on social media, just because people are doing the hashtags on you on social media, that doesn't mean that that will translate into votes. That doesn't mean it will translate into votes. So small political parties must really be careful when it comes to social media, because it's easy to use social media, man. It's easy to vote on a poll on a social media because I'm simply sitting at home, pressing my phone, and I come across a poll saying, which political party would you prefer in 2024? ANC, DA, EFF, or IFP? I can easily pick the IFP, or I can easily pick the DA, or I can easily pick the ANC. But that doesn't mean that when it comes to elections, I'm actually going to go to the polls and vote for a certain political party. So small political parties really need to be careful when it comes to this. It doesn't mean that people are going to vote for you. It doesn't mean that people are going to vote for you. Young people right now, they are complaining. But you know how young people in South Africa are. They love complaining, but they don't want to do anything about everything they complain about. So I wouldn't trust the social media. I mean, I wouldn't put my trust on social media, honestly.
So I think that's a very important situation that we have to consider, is that the apathy now is no longer just an apathy of disinterest and purely I'm resigning from democracy, I don't care about the system. It's more.
Why the producers of SABC, they're already playing the song, man? Like the lady hasn't even finished speaking, but they're already playing the song, man. What the hell is wrong with these people?
More of, I realize that democracy is very important and I realize that I have the power to vote, but I'm overwhelmed by the amount of options I actually have, and the fact that I have this responsibility of needing to decide one person to vote for me is the next step that young people have to take. And
oh my God, man, I hope YouTube doesn't hit me with a copyright strike when I upload this video, man. I hope it doesn't hit me with a copyright strike. Man, I hate the SABC producers. What the hell are you people doing, man? What the hell are you people doing, man? You are trying to get us hit with the copyright strikes, man. I hope this video doesn't get a copyright strike. Guys, 350 political parties, what do you think? Do you think it is a good thing for South Africa to have more than 350 political parties on the ballot? Do you think it's a total insanity, or do you think this is democracy, man? Everyone has a right to actually choose. Guys, please tell me what you think on the comment section. Don't forget to hit that like button, and the most important part is subscribe. My name is Thomas Maba, so I will see you next time. Bye bye.